Hello friends, welcome to another video. Sorry, that was way too enthusiastic. It's Tuesday. I'm tired. I don't know when this video is going up, but today it is Tuesday and I'm really exhausted. I think it's because I've had too much human contact, and often when I see too many people, I become like goo. I don't know what to do with anything. But before we get into the video, I would like to say two things. One thing is that I applied for a maintenance loan, which is like a student loan, because I'm currently doing my degree, and it got rejected, and I'm fairly upset about that because I was really expecting to get some money, and it kind of sucks to have a low paying job and study and do all these things and just do 100 things at once and kind of be living from paycheck to paycheck. It's kind of difficult, and that's what's brought my mood down today. The other thing, which is slightly better news, is that I've been listening to Pitbull feat. Kesha's Timber on repeat like almost all week, and for some reason, and I don't know why, I kind of listen to all kinds of music. Pop music isn't typically like my kind of music, but I listen to everything. But I've been listening to this song on repeat, and for some reason this spring I feel like my aesthetic, I just want it to be that song. Does that make sense? Like I want a Western look. Like I want a hat, and I want those tiny little shorts, and I want cowboy boots, and yeah, that's in my brain. And it kind of happened last year when I couldn't stop listening to Welcome to the Party by Diplo, French Montana, Xavier, and Lil Pump. And all I wanted was a fur coat, and I got a fur coat, and I lived the winter that I wanted to live, which my entire aesthetic was just obnoxious. But now for spring, possibly at one of the two events that I'll be at, I want a cowboy Kesha timber aesthetic. So yeah, I just wanted you to fill you in on that if you do attend one of the two events that I will be speaking at professionally, as a professional, as a speaker on a panel, I will be dressed as a cowboy, probably at David's event, if we're being completely real. But I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I feel like that would be the most appropriate. But I'll leave like all the links for things like that in the description below, and y'all can check those out if you want to come see me in person. But we are continuing with our journey down memory lane. I know we took a detour last week because it was my birthday and we had 1,001 things to do. For example, no hijab day, for example, my birthday, and me just live streaming every so often. We've been off schedule. It's time to get back on track. I want to continue going through my diary, and I feel like this is a good way for me to go through it and explore it. Disclaimer, there are some really heavy things that I'm going to be going through, and some really dark thoughts. So if you're not about that, I'll see you another time. I don't know when. I am expecting to receive a few things soon. I'm expecting to receive like DNA tests from Ancestry very soon. I have a scrapbook to fill out with my memories from last year and the year before. We have other things that we do on this channel, but for now, this is what I want to do because I'm delving into some of my darker memories, because I always feel like it's a good idea to reflect, and we will have intermissions of artwork because it was my diary that I used to draw in a lot. So yeah, I think in the last video where I was talking about my memories, we talked about some of the more traumatic things that happened in my life, such as my brother going through open heart surgery and me needing to call the police. But yeah, we're gonna continue. It's up to you if you want to hang out or not. But continuing, this entry is from the 10th of June 2014, and we are reading from my Goliath of a diary that I used to keep when I was very little, very young, very teenage, very angsty, young little Faye, who was still a fundamentalist and going through a lot of awful things. But this is from the 10th of June of 2014, so it was quite a while ago. My whole body is aching. God, I hate being female. My head is pounding. Every sound is amplified. I hate them. I hate them all. They eat away at my mind. And I swear every single time they talk, every single time I look at them, every single time I even catch wind of their presence, a little piece of me just dies. Inch by inch, my tolerance, my patience, my better characteristics, the ones that I built up for so long, parts with me. I've become a monster, a mean, angry monster that knows no boundaries and no kindness. I cry, and I cry, and I cry some more, and it never seems to end. I hate crying. I never used to use that word before, hate. I used to think that I was incapable of hating. Ah, what a comely fantasy, eh? I use the word more and more. It's practically becoming my characteristic, hating things. This business of living is so hard. Why? Why is it so hard? Everyone is so sure that this is good for me, excellent practice for the years to come. After having done what I've done, having said what I've said, having become what I've become, why, for all fuck's sake, would I ever want to do this again in the future? They'll never appreciate me, thank me for what they've put me through. Never. I refuse to hope for such a disgustingly despicable dream. They've robbed me of everything. My pride, my worldly belongings, and my hope. I have nothing left. Can I die now? This was like the year after my mother passed away. There's a lot of entries that are like that. There's quite a few entries also while she was sick that I wrote. That is just like this. I really felt as though while she was sick and the year or two years after she died, I really couldn't talk about these things with anybody. And my diary was like my own respite because, you know, I didn't really have any friends. A lot of my close family relatives had just abandoned us completely. Zafia, who we've talked about on this channel, was one of those people. She just disappeared. I didn't hear from her after my mother passed away. And there was just no escaping for me. And a lot of these darker thoughts that I share in this diary, they weren't like my constant being. Like I wasn't constantly being upset and angry and hateful, but it was the only place where I could express it. So a lot of these entries are quite dark, and I think that there's this side of me that I'm just not very... It's not even that I'm not proud of it. Like I sometimes don't even acknowledge it. Like there are moments in my life where I feel like I shouldn't feel like this, or why am I sad, or why am I angry, or, you know, I just feel as though I'm not allowed to feel that way. And this was the only place that I was allowed to feel this way. So a lot of my entries from here on out are going to be like this, where it's just I want to die kind of entries. Just to clarify, I've never personally been suicidal. It's just not something that I felt before, and I would feel wrong for claiming that, or for people assuming that, because it's genuinely, I've never truly felt like I wanted to take my own life. I've definitely thought about it, obviously, but I've never been so motivated as to actually attempt in any way, shape, or form. These expressions of can I die now, or can I just disappear, it's more a feeling of like I just don't want to exist. And I know that doesn't, on the surface of it, that sounds like the same thing, like wanting to kill yourself and wanting to not exist anymore, but in my mind they're very different things. And I think that anyone who has experienced those two things independently could tell you that they are two different things. So I don't want anybody to worry. This is why I'm telling you this. But before we move on to the next probably depressing entry, I wanted to show you a picture that I drew. This was, I don't know how clear that's coming out on screen, but this was a character who I used to write stories, and this was a character I drew from that story. It was an Assassin's Creed fanfiction, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's still online somewhere in the ether. Either on DeviantArt, which I used to peruse quite a bit, or on Movellas, which was the writing site that I used to use. But he was a main character. There were two characters. I've forgotten the name of the main character, who was a woman, but this was like her love interest, who was an assassin from Assassin's Creed. He was meant to be like Altair's father, for those of you who played the video games. So next entry is from the 17th of May 2014. Independence. Isn't that just a politically correct term for selfish? At my outburst, Ed and Age insist that I should think of myself due to recent events. Put myself first. This Ed is a different Ed to the one that you guys have seen on this channel. This is a different Ed. Put myself first in all things and let chance run its course. Take risks. Gain independence. How can I do such a thing? How can I put myself before people who do everything in their power to hurt me, but at the same time know nothing? There are several outlets that would accept me, should I feel the need to walk out of my home, the army, nunneries, perhaps even a homeless shelter, the army being the obvious priority. But I cannot become independent of my family who are so desperately, though they would never care to admit it, dependent on me. Ali and Musa are still babies. Hafsa may as well join that category. To hell with the rest, but if I left them, could I ever forgive myself? I'm here to pick up my mom's slack, but if I go, who will pick up my slack? Morals aside, I'm scared. We all like to mask our actions with high motives, but at the core of things, leaving home scares the shite out of me. It's the only thing I've ever known. Age says that I should get out more escape, introversy. But where do I go? With whom do I socialize? What would be acceptable to Dad? I don't know. Independence seems a far-to-fetch goal. I'm not altogether sure I want it. As shitty as they can be, family has always been there. Or am I just making excuses now? Huh. I thought confiding in you might clear some things up for me. Instead, I have a whole lot more questions buzzing around my head. The biggest question, though, if I do choose to leave, which is an option that becomes more and more appealing on a daily basis, how will I confront the ones that I leave behind? So, a couple of things in this journal entry. I genuinely thought that if I joined the army, that would be a way of leaving my home, because I didn't want to get married. Even though there were quite a few people who desperately wanted to get me married off, I didn't want to get married. I didn't think that that was a solution to my problems. I genuinely thought that joining the army or joining a nunnery was the best way, was the only way forward of me leaving my home. Because I was a dumb kid, and I didn't know how the world worked at all. And the other thing, which is obviously addressed in this journal entry, is how I could leave my siblings behind, which was just a constant thought in my brain, like, if I leave, what's going to happen to my siblings? If I leave, what's going to happen to my siblings? If I leave, what is going to happen to my siblings? And it's still something that I constantly think about. It's still something that I can't really, like, I can't even get through talking about with people who know me, people who understand my story, people who get everything. It's something that is so deeply emotional for me to talk about, because I genuinely feel a deep sense of guilt for leaving them behind. Like, I watched Lilo and Stitch on my birthday with Alicia. Well, not on my birthday, on Saturday when we celebrated my birthday. And I was just sitting there, well, I wasn't like bawling, but I was like sitting there and crying, because it was a very close to home kind of story, you know, sister looking after her younger sister. And I mean, to be fair, I had like 4 of them to take care of. But it was just something that I really want to get over, but I can't. And I don't think I can ever get over until it's completely resolved. And even back then, in 2014, like, I was thinking about it. Like, I was thinking I could leave. Like, I could just get up and be homeless and leave right now. I could join a nunnery, something that I would never think of doing. I could join the army. And, you know, like, at that point, I didn't even value my life. So I didn't even care about joining the front line. But if I leave, what's going to happen to my siblings? It was just something that was so constant in my brain. And it still is something that I constantly think about. And I don't know how to get it out of my brain. I don't think it ever will leave my brain, if I'm being completely honest. So, yeah. Again, before I read the next one, I want to show you some artwork. I think the artwork just makes it a bit lighter, considering it's so heavy. I don't know who these characters are, but I was a big doodler, so this was a doodle that I cut out and stuck here, and this was another doodle that I cut out and stuck here. I actually really like this. I might render this in a digital form, this drawing here. Next journal entry is from the 15th of May 2014. Heyo, it's been a while. I've been disinclined of late, and though a book can hardly receive an apology, I am sorry. Again, this was like my only friend. Solace is difficult to find these days, and I doubt that even you could offer me any. It sucks a little that I almost have to talk to a book to seek solace but not find it. It actually sounds a little insane. Nonetheless, I'll bring you up to speed on current events, shall I? Dad seems to be panicking less, but is still the dictator he's always been. The kids are irritating. It's as if their hormone levels rise with mine. They become so much more annoying at the wrong time of the month. Idiot brother stole 60 to 90 pounds from me. Now everyone tells me to hide my money in my own house. I get sleep, but awful nightmares. I mean, I'm mean and angry all the time. I remember having a pretty voice. It's gone now. My meals are irregular. I usually have 1 or 2 sandwiches in a day, give or take a few snacks. I'm working to finish a story I've recently started called Rogues and Renegades. I did eventually finish that story. It's pretty good, even if I do say so myself. My own personal way at getting revenge on... I don't know if I can say that name. I'm going to say that name. She sucks. Revenge on Bryony, the traitor. If I could skin her alive, I would, ridiculous as she is. If I can print out all the screenshots, I will stick them in here. My anger knows no bounds towards her and, of course, Marshall McButthead. I think that's it for the moment. I might get a little philosophical in the following pages, and seeing as I've thoroughly broken your spine, brace yourself, eh? Also, I've had a strong obsession with Haytham Kenway of late. I love his tricorn hat. I've always had an obsession with hats. Haytham Kenway is a character in Assassin's Creed 3. I was very obsessed with Assassin's Creed. We know this by now. Anyways, so I don't even know how to break this down, really. A lot was going on 15th of May, so it was a year after my, well, not a full year, a few months after about 5 to 6 months after my mother passed away. And I was looking after the kids, and there were a lot of things going on in my house. My dad was a neurotic mess. The kids were neurotic messes. My brother stole a lot of my money. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating well. I was writing a lot back then because it was my only outlet aside from like doodling, which I wasn't even really allowed to do. I always felt bad about doodling because it's haram as hell. But this little incident with Bryony and Marshall, so I was part of a writing community on Movellas. And this was, you know, my only other outlet besides writing. It was writing and my writing community. So there were these people that we knew. And the tea on that is, and I kind of not still let it go because it's still, and it still bothers me on a very cerebral level. Like, I don't understand, like, it was such a long time ago and it's such a small thing, but I still can't believe that it happened. So I don't know, this might be the last story I tell because honestly it's a long one. I don't know if I address it again, that's the thing. But if I do, we'll just skip over it. But let me tell you the story. So basically, Bryony was this user. I believe her username was Little Miss Hollywood. She's not on the site anymore, so I don't think it matters. So she was on this site and we were friends. There was like a group of us together and we would write together and we would share ideas and things like that. And at one point, Bryony had convinced some of her real life friends to join Movellas and we would interact with them and things like that. And then just all these really dramatic things started happening with Bryony. So Bryony got adopted into a foster home. She got taken away. She like attempted suicide. She was like cutting herself and burning herself and drinking bleach and things like that. Like all of these things kept happening and we would keep in really close contact with these real life friends of hers to make sure that she was okay and things were going well. And I think at one point there was an incident where she had gotten badly beaten up and the police were at her house and things like that. And these were all stories that we heard online and we wanted to check in and make sure that everything was okay. But we later found out that Bryony was controlling all these accounts, that she was making up all these stories, and her real life friends who she had stupidly used their names and was controlling their accounts under their names had come along and basically exposed her. And then she just turned on all of us, and I think she just, everyone was just, it was a mess. It was a mess. She started reporting everybody. She was, you know, gossiping behind everybody's back. She called me a bunch of things, and I was, at this time I was like, it was little, so I was like 16, 17 or something. And, you know, as someone who had been psychologically stunted and just isolated, and who actually went through some of the things that she was talking about that she had completely faked, it really hurt. It really hurt because I thought that this was a person that I truly cared about and I opened my heart to, and I would try to support any chance I got, and it was all fake. And Marshall was her, like, her online boyfriend who completely took her side and things like that. So yeah, that's the story in here. It was the most interesting thing in my life that wasn't, you know, my life at the time. There's a couple more drawings, so I think I'm going to share those with you. So I don't think I have, do I have the other side? I don't think I have the other side, but this was a picture I drew of my friend Molly. She was another writer friend of mine, and I got this, so I got this picture to be redrawn by Simon's girlfriend. Her name is Poppy. I believe she redrew this digitally to make a little banner for Molly and myself, because we always used to compete in November for NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month. We were big nerds, big nerds. And Midnight Rogue, which I don't know if you can see that, was my username. And for a long time, I wanted to keep that username for everything because I was genuinely proud of that username. But I slowly moved away from it because it was like, because it's kind of tacky. It's kind of like emo XD rar. So this was a doodle, or a series of doodles that I did for one of the stories that I wrote that was called Fures Misericordiam, which again, we are never going to read on this channel because it is a whole musical based loosely around drama on novellas that I just kind of talked about. What else? Assassin's Creed, my like original characters, and Les Miserables. We're never reading it on this channel. I'm embarrassed, but I did genuinely enjoy writing this story. I think it's still online somewhere if you really want to go look it up. But this was a doodle I did for it, and again, like I really miss this style of my drawing because I didn't draw for a few years in the middle there. So yeah. I'm gonna read this final diary entry and then we'll close out the session because I feel like this is depressing for 30 minutes, isn't it? Besides like all the nonsense stories that I'm telling. But I'm gonna read this one and then we'll close out the session, and you know, I may do a second recording for Friday's video. But yeah, I hope you've had a good time so far. So this was from 17th of December 2013. So this was 7 days after the death of my mother. Okay. They are not my children. They are not someone else's children. They are my siblings. The only group of people who do not hate me and do not love me. The only group of people who will never respect me either. How much more of this can I take? How much more arguing, screaming, crying, forgiving, idiocy, stupidity, moronic behavior, tantrums, etc., can I possibly take? Each one that came, I dreamt him or her to be better than the last, but dreams are ever dreams and nothing more. They all turn into one of them. I'm sick and tired and in physical pain. I'm sick and tired of raising children that don't care the least bit of the favors I do for them, the guests that come in with feigned sympathy, my pretentious behavior towards them, and traditional protocol, my granting the benefit of doubt, being told to be patient and strong, the family politics, being undermined, being me. I'm sick and tired of everything. If only I could go out and kill something. I'm not saying I did anything. That's what it says. You know what? Let's read the next few because I think that this kind of all ties together, and I don't want to just like close out and then start with this because it's honestly it's quite. I mean, it's not heavy, but it's quite depressing. So 11th December 2013. So this is the day after my mother passed away. I'm not sure how I feel. The first thing I felt when they told me, I felt relieved. Closure. It was a single thing I've been constant in asking. Closure. Falling on one side or the other. Live or die. The time of purge is over. I'm no longer held in limbo. I think I meant purgatory rather than purge. I can finally move forward on a certain course. Of course, there is sadness, but the fighter, I put that with a capital F. I think the fighter is my mother. I think that's what I meant by the fighter. But the fighter has cleaned her slate. Her suffering and her pain has purified her. She got to see her mother, though. I pity her youngest brother, having been kept away so far off. So my mother's youngest brother lives in Bangladesh, and he didn't get to see her before she passed away. She left with no regrets. Perhaps I envy her more than I am sad for her. Her burdens have been paid for here and avoided hereafter. Many of us cannot hope for such a thing. I have only one regret. I've mentioned it too many times to restate it, and I suppose I've forgiven it. Thus ends this chapter. Motherhood has dropped on me early. I pray it goes well. The final entry I will read you is from the 10th of December. So I believe I wrote this as soon as I heard the news, because I had to be strong for everyone else, even my dad. So this was on the 10th of December 2013, and I wrote, at 5 a.m. she was gone. Now I wonder, who can grieve when such reality as children and house-minding has visited upon them? Must I see the body? Must I? I had so many mixed emotions that I didn't immediately address when I found out that my mother was dead. I think I might talk about them in slightly more detail in the next installment of this, but I think you can tell that there's a lot of emotions going on here. And it was really hard. It was really hard for me to go through that as, you know, a 17-year-old girl. It was really hard for all of my siblings to go through that. I don't know if it was difficult for my father to go through it. He's kind of always had no emotions about most things. I think the most that he felt was that, oh, everything's going to be harder now, rather than, you know, I've lost my wife. Yeah, it was a really difficult time, but I'll tell that story in the next episode, I think. For here and now, I hope you enjoyed this installment, or, you know, got something out of it. I don't know if people enjoy this content or not, but I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you in the next one.